Catherine, how you doing?
Hi, Sam. I'm good, thanks. Yeah, how are you?
Good, thanks. All right. Yeah, the weather's getting there, slowly
Oh,
creeping through April. So
spring and summer around the corner.
it is indeed. It is indeed. So this is part of our debrief series where we're asking the experts in their fields, generally people we're working with or collaborating with. Um, and in particular, we've been working on a project with you for a couple of years now. Was it? It's nearly three now. Oh, it's all very exciting, but
Time
it,
flies.
it it's actually brought up some quite interesting things, and it's really changed the way we work. But first, can you introduce yourself and tell people who you are and what you do?
Sure, absolutely. I'm Catherine Grinyer, and I'm the founder of Attendable. We are an inclusive events agency, and we've also recently launched Swagable, which is the product that Sam was talking about. But I'm sure we'll come on and talk about that a bit more.
We will indeed, we will indeed. So I suppose my first question is why attendable?
Yeah, so Attendable came about during the pandemic, but it was really the culmination of lots of work that I've been doing in the last sort of a couple of decades, really around inclusive communications, inclusive marketing, PR, and events. And so we've been running a number of events prior to the pandemic, and then during the pandemic, everything obviously went virtual.
Yeah.
And some of my clients were coming to me and saying, we don't know, we realize that, certain audiences are getting left behind. So it's all well and good to switch to virtual, but how do we make sure that deaf people can follow the content in an online conference? How do blind people access certain platforms?
Mm.
And we had a lot of expertise in accessible platforms, accessible communications, and inclusion in events. And so we had the idea for Attendable.
Okay, right. So but in your work before that was, I think we first met working on RIDI together.
Yes,
That,
yeah, that's
yeah.
right. Yeah. So that's the Recruitment Industry Disability Initiative, and that's one of the campaigns that I've been connected to for, well, probably since its inception. So it's
Right.
well over 10 years.
Okay.
So under different guises, we've supported the communications and events for the Recruitment Industry Disability Initiative, and that's looking at, yeah, UK recruiters recognizing that they need to bring do things differently in
Yeah.
order to bring disabled people into their organizations.
Sure.
And recruiters are really the gateway to to employment, obviously.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And yeah, so that, I know you've done the website for RIDI, and the RIDI Awards
Yeah.
is a program that we won, so we worked on that together.
We did, yes, we did.
Yeah.
So I think it's the first thing is how crazy it we're 2024, and I still feels like there's work to be done in
Yeah.
inclusivity.
Oh, massively. I mean, I think, as somebody who lives and breathes it every day,
Mm,
sometimes I get really sort of disheartened about, how little the dial has shifted.
sure.
And then other days I'm a bit more buoyant and optimistic, and see that there are actually many more organizations thinking about how to be more accessible and inclusive. And if you pop something like inclusive comms into, or accessible websites into a search engine, you'll get far more results than you would have done 5 years ago, or
Right.
10, let alone 10, 15 years ago, when I was sort of pioneering a lot of this work.
Yeah. And I think one thing that's I see a lot of parallels in this, in that we have the WCAG, which
Mm,
I always forget what it stands for. It's the Web Content Accessibility Guideline, which was actually founded in 1994,
yeah.
right at the inception of the internet, really.
Yeah.
Um, and I've been reading up on this quite a bit, in that they're leading the charge,
Mm,
in a big way, and in a good way as well. And they have different grading. So there's A, double A, and triple A.
yeah.
And it's, a lot of it is quite basic stuff. I think you'd be hard pushed to have a website that wouldn't scrape an A rating.
Yeah.
It'd have to be pretty horrendous to,
Yeah, I
to
think
fail
so.
over.
Yeah.
Although they
Yeah.
do exist, and there are
Mm,
there are a lot of them. And I think a lot of them is really sort of aesthetics over functionality.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, I mean, one of our mantras here is form and function. It's got to
Mm,
look great, but it's got to work.
yeah,
That's
totally.
the
Yeah.
fundamentals.
Yeah.
And not at the cost. And I think you know, as a creative agency, there's you know, we look at a lot of creative agency websites. They're kind of fantastic, but like they're hard to use. They're
Mm,
slow to load. I think that's
yeah.
changed a lot. Certainly we're back in the Flash days of crazy Flash websites.
Mm,
You know,
mm,
they were one of the first thing I saw as like a big no from accessibility because it was
yeah.
impossible.
No, for sure. I mean, you know, I always say to clients that accessibility and inclusion is part of the creative challenge. It's, you know, how you can get form and function, as you say. You know,
Mm.
it needs to be fit for purpose. It needs to
Yeah,
be engaging from a content perspective, and from, you know, community building, or, you know, your audience reach, or what have you. And it also needs, you know, needs to look good.
yes,
So,
yeah,
and it is possible. You know, many websites can be all of these things, and
absolutely.
and all of them should be.
Definitely, and I think it was interesting when we were working on designs for Swagable and like that. It was interesting to sort of see how far we push things, and you can
Mm,
push it as far as you like. You really
yeah.
can, as long as you're following some standards. You know,
Yeah,
it it
totally.
it, it shouldn't restrict any sort of creative application.
Yeah, and that's where the standards are really helpful. I mean, you know, and again, I always say, like anything that gets written down and sort of set in stone as a standard, or there's always a sort of slight danger that it will become outmoded. And there's obviously been a
Mm,
few recent updates to the WCAG guidelines,
yeah,
and I think actually the pace of the updates is increasing as sort of web technologies
yeah, yeah,
changing, so, sort of to keep up with it. But it gives you a good like baseline. And what I love about it is there's so much free information out there for people to inform themselves
absolutely.
on. So, you know, you know, it's all there if you know where to look for it. And
Yeah,
you know, part of the biggest challenge, and certainly in the early years for WCAG and the World Wide Web Consortium, was people didn't know about it.
yeah,
But you know, agencies like yours and mine, you know, spreading the word and sort of letting people know it's there is a really, really good thing.
absolutely. I think, you know, fundamentally, it's changed how we approach any website we do. You know, the good news is we sort of did some retrospectives, and do you know what? Most of them were an A or AA at least.
Mm,
Um, but it's actually made us think more about, well, okay, let's not hide things away in menus. Let's make sure, you know, let's not have loads of pop-ups everywhere. You know, you look at some of the news sites, it's just a mess of information,
mm, yeah,
and they
yeah,
will fail
absolutely.
on a lot of points.
I,
Yeah.
I mean, it warms my heart, Sam, that you know, it's changed the way that D-Type, you know, builds and delivers client sort of web projects.
Mm,
And I, you know, I always think every day in every way the world's getting a little bit more accessible and inclusive,
mm,
which is got to be it's got to be a good thing.
absolutely.
But yeah, I think you can, you know, you just have to use a bit of empathy and think about you know, so if you don't have a sort of diverse team,
Mm,
and you can't maybe, you know, have sort of extensive focus groups or user testing, there are loads of tools and things that you can use to simulate some of the you know, scenarios that
yeah.
different disabilities or different user groups will encounter. And you know, again, they're all there for the taking.
Absolutely. There's some good tools that you can put like a kind of wrap around your site, like Reclaim,
Hmm.
something we've looked at in the past, that can kind of convert a site to a degree to
Yeah,
accessible. But actually, if you're building it the right way in the first place, you shouldn't need these things. That's
no,
more if you wanted these screen readers. But
yeah,
then browsers have caught up now, so you know things are moving rapidly. I think that's the other parallel I've seen is the web moves at a phenomenal rate, and we look at speed
yeah.
optimization, all these things, and actually, a, WCAG compliant website will perform well because you've cut out a lot of the chaff that you don't really need in the site as well. So that's
Well,
good.
that's the thing. That's like the hidden secret of accessibility. I always think is that it helps boost SEO.
Yeah,
So, because if your site's built properly to be accessible, then you've labeled your pages and you've indexed, you know, the back end of the site
mm,
in such a way that you know, Google, which is essentially blind, a computer cannot see
yeah,
your beautiful
yeah.
designs. They just go on the on the content. And so um you know, that's another great reason to consider web accessibility,
Yeah.
is that it will boost your Google rankings.
Do you know what? That is just a fascinating statement as well. I kind of never really considered that Google is blind. It's literally
Yeah,
just going off the information presented. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it cannot see the beautiful designs that we
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
sweat over.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm,
it's not relevant. So if you can go back to that level, and
Yeah.
then think about how discoverable and accessible the content is, and that comes from the form of the, you know, the site, then, you know, you're going to have better chances in the search rankings.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
this time about 4 years ago, we had the advent of the GDPR, which turned every business upside down a little bit, and
Mm,
particularly in web, because we were sort of retrofitting to older sites in terms of privacy policies, cookie policies, things like that.
mm,
And it actually prompted a good wave of compliance, which I thought was good. You know,
mm.
actually, let's do things properly. Interestingly, it's not stopped any of my spam emails, which is
No.
that was only one of the caveats, I suppose.
Yeah.
But that took on a global identity. It was championed by the EU
Yep.
fundamentally. Now, since the UK has left the EU, they've got their own version. I forget the name, but it's basically GDPR, but
Mm,
with a UK badge. And interestingly, the states jumped on it as well, which
mm,
made perfect sense. And even more interestingly, now lots of different states are creating their own versions of it. So California is one of the early ones, if not the first.
mm,
Just recently, I think just this week, Kentucky announced it had released its guidelines for it. So in that, we looked at cookie tools, because it was getting so hard with Google Analytics, YouTube,
mm.
anything you put on your website is tracking you in some way in a cookie.
Yeah.
So we looked at various tools, and we now use a tool called Termageddon, which is a proactive tool, and
Yeah.
it identifies different states and where people are from. It's brilliant.
Mm,
Now, what I think was really interesting is, considering all of this, the states are actually ahead of the UK and the rest of the world, I think, in disability compliance. They had the ADA, which is the Americans with Disabilities Act, which
yeah.
actually started in 1990 as a
Mm-hmm.
kind of general act, much like
Mm.
our own. So I think I think our equivalent is the Equality
Yeah,
Policy.
the Equality Act
Yeah,
2005, but we did have the
yeah,
Disability Discrimination Act that was before that. I can't remember, sometime in the 90s.
yeah. And interestingly, they don't. The ADA don't explicitly mention the internet
Mm,
at all. They reference WCAG, but not
hmm.
actually the internet. So it's interesting. But the states have a phenomenal rate of cases of people getting sued because their websites are not compliant with
Yeah.
ADA, which is fascinating. I think, especially as the UK and EU were sort of ahead on GDPR kind of things. Why do you think the states are ahead in compliance for disability?
I think it's a really good question. I think really, you know, the US is sort of well known for being a more litigious society,
Yeah, of
certainly
course.
than the
Yeah.
UK or kind of you know, our cousins in Europe. And other parts of the world. So I think that legal action has driven the kind of fear of compliance, and there were some landmark cases
Mm,
with big payouts that you know, rightly
mm.
spooked a lot of brands
Yeah, yeah.
into recognizing that they had to do this and take it seriously. In the UK, the Equality Act, you know, there's public sector duty, so public sector organisations have to comply in a way that private sector do not. But the Equality Act does cover that on all kind of communications,
Mm,
but the enforcement here is not anything like what you get in the States, and there's been very little case law
mm.
in the UK on web accessibility, and I think the same is for the European Union. However, things are, you know, looking like they might, you know, the balance might tip the other way, because the EU is just about to have the European Accessibility Act that's coming into force in next year.
Okay. Yeah.
And so anybody doing business within the EU will need to ensure that their digital platforms, you know, any kind of technology is accessible.
Yeah.
And I think that will be a big driver for
Absolutely. Yeah.
businesses and organizations here in the UK. And it does mirror some of the legislation we have here anyway, or some of the provisions. But I think it will just give a sort of extra force to the business case around it. I mean, obviously, I think we should be doing it anyway. I think it's the right thing to
Of
do.
course. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But the kind of legal and business drivers, need to be there as well.
Yeah, I think it's just a shame these things have to become a law for them to really come to fruition.
Yeah. No.
I mean, and I think that's the same with any sector of anything really, But I think particularly with disability, I think it's as I'm sure you would agree, often feels a bit left behind.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, totally. Absolutely. I mean, if I look across the kind of inclusion landscape, we still don't have equal pay for women, and that's been something that's been campaigned for since the 1960s.
Yeah.
So there is a sort of degree of, hence my earlier comment about, sometimes I get a bit disheartened and depressed about the sort of slow pace of change, but
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
there are other things that where we're leapfrogging forward.
Mm.
And I think generational change, I think there's school leavers and people that are new into the market force, their job market, that have grown up with a different attitude towards inclusion, and that
Yeah.
know, and maybe they've had support in place in education, and then they're arriving in the workplace and thinking, well, why can't I do the things that I was able to do at school or at university or college? They had the sort of tech in place for me, to support with dyslexia, or screen reader,
Yeah.
or note taking software, or whatever it might have been. And then you get to the workplace, and employers aren't sort of clued in on that. And so that generation that are coming through are driving, you've got sort of grassroots change and sort of attitudinal change, that
Yeah.
why should we treat people differently just because they have a disability, or they've different gender identity or sexual orientation or whatever. I think that will be a huge change, but
Yeah. Absolutely.
that's got to come alongside also standards and legislation as well.
Of
You
course.
need both.
Yeah. So this kind of moves us neatly on to, I think, Swagable.
Oh, it's time to
Um,
talk about Swagable, Sam.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think again, this just blew my mind that these tools didn't exist. So, go for it. Tell us about Swaggle.
Yeah, so it is a digital swag bag, a platform for events, essentially. So we all know, we've all been to a sort of event or a party where you've been given a goodie bag or a swag bag, and or the event hosts, sponsors, partners put giveaways in the bag for you to take home. Well, again, during the pandemic, we were running a conference for one of our clients. It was all around digital inclusion, TechShare Pro, and they wanted to have a swag bag, but it obviously needed to be digital because we were all locked away in
Yeah.
our homes. And so we looked on the market to see if we could find something that could do the job, and that, of course, was accessible, because the whole conference was about bringing together tech accessibility
Yeah.
experts and professionals from across Europe. So any products that we sort of served up to them had to be accessible, and it didn't exist. And so I, in another one of my moments of frustration, I sort of said to the team, well, how hard can it be? We'll just build our own. And I can remember specking out the idea and sending it over to you and saying, well, we've had this idea, how hard is it going to be to build it? And we spent some time, didn't we, talking about what it needs to do, and the
Yeah.
different sort of functions. And essentially it's how I describe it to people that don't know what sort of virtual swag is. You're building almost like a kind of microsite, companion site to go with with an event, that allows you to put in different items in the bag,
Yeah.
which could be downloadable documents, it could be um links to yeah, I know, playlist content, video, videos, music. It could be physical fulfillment. You could have send me a wellness pack or a hoodie, or that kind of stuff, so you can still have the physical, or it could
Yeah.
be discount codes, coupons, competitions, prize draws, all that kind of stuff. And then also we've got a couple of swag types around, contact request forms and meeting
Yeah.
request. So, quite often, I don't know about you, Sam, I go along to an event and I, see someone or talk to them and think, oh, I didn't get their business card, but I really want to
Yeah.
arrange a meeting, and I've got no real way of, I don't remember who they were, or,
Yeah. Yeah.
their
Yeah.
exact name. And so you can't look them up on LinkedIn. And Swagable basically will allow you to see, oh, I can see, D-Type were a sponsor at that event. Oh, there's a contact or book a meeting or meeting request form. And I can put in my request, and it goes straight to the brand.
Yeah.
And hopefully you get, that they're there to do business, so you'll get a response. So it builds a kind of post-event marketing,
Sure. Sure.
and sort of brand engagement. You can use it during the event, or in the run up, or just afterwards as a sort of thank you.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, it's a comms platform as well. I think this
Yeah,
is one of the mind-blowing things we looked at. Is obviously we need to track interactions, so the event owners and sponsors will see how many people have interacted the bag, who's viewed it, who's actually interacted with it. And we struggled to find, I thought, oh, there must be some compliant CRMs out there. Well, no, there's not.
yeah.
Or,
Well, we had to
or,
build our
or,
own, didn't we?
or certainly not any of the proprietary ones.
Mm.
Obviously they've got their own vision and mission, what they're doing with their product. So we actually then partnered with Web Alliance to look at the CRM side of things, because they
Yeah.
could create a bespoke CRM that was compliant and just built entirely for purpose for this project, which I think was brilliant. So it really is a truly unique product.
It is, yeah.
So,
Well, no, and we're super excited. We only launched in February this year, so yeah, going back into the pandemic, we sort of had a proof of concept, didn't we? And then we
yeah,
did some further development on it, and yeah, and it's we finally got it to market in February, and yeah, so and I think it's beyond events, it's actually a really good engagement tool. We've had some inquiries from people running like training programs.
yeah,
They want to have it as a repository. You could have speaker slides, or course guidelines, or whatever on it. I mean, there's loads of different applications for it, and we've got loads of great ideas in the pipeline for future development.
absolutely, absolutely. It's kind of, I've had some ideas on the call actually.
Yeah, I always get ideas. Yeah.
What I think one thing I love most about it is what swag stands for, is
Yeah,
something we all
yeah.
get, which,
Something we all get,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
And it's got inclusion at the heart of it. And we're confident that we can offer it to any of our clients on events, and know that none of their attendees are going to be excluded from the digital experience, because the site has been built with all users in mind. And that's at the heart of Attendable and what we do. And
yeah, yeah.
and obviously, with D-Type's help and expertise, we've baked that into the Swagable platform.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, it's just been a great project to work with you on it, and just nice to know it's something that's going to be infinitely reusable as well. So yeah,
Yeah, it is. Well, it's always great working with you and the team. And I think anyone that's kind of embarking on a new digital project or product, there's a lot of sort of things you've got to think about, and you've always
absolutely.
been brilliant at giving me great advice as to where to go, and and how we can solve, overcome whatever barriers there are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I've just definitely really appreciated that.
Well, I think phasing is the key
Absolutely.
phrase
So
here. Is
yes,
like, great,
yeah.
that'll be the next release.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
you said that to us fairly early on. Phase one was the kind of proof of concept, and then
yeah,
phase two was kind of getting it ready to launch, and I think we're probably now in phase three. So
yeah, yeah,
and I can already see a couple of phases beyond that, as
yeah.
as you know. So yeah, hopefully all good things in store. But and we have a lovely marketing site that you helped us with as well. That's swagablebag.com if anybody wants to check it out. Yeah, so hopefully people will sort of discover it and start using it in their events. And I think, and actually one thing that we haven't sort of touched on, because we've obviously talked a lot about accessibility, is the sustainability angle. Because we see a lot of waste in the event space where things are printed and produced just for one-off for events. And with a digital swag bag solution, you're sort of minimizing the sort of one-off print, and it's actually much better for carbon footprint.
Absolutely.
And we're looking at potentially partnering with a sort of carbon offsetting agency as Swagable, so that we can start to quantify what that actually means, because I think that's it's really important as well.
Excellent. Well, thanks for your time, Catherine. Really good chatting, and yeah, I just think what a fantastic thing Swagable is, and really pleased to be part of it, part of the journey.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks for
No worries.
thanks for inviting me
Any
to
last
chat.
things you wanted to mention before we wrap it up?
Well, I mean, we didn't really plug Attendable very much, but should anybody want to engage an accessible and inclusive events agency, we're at attendable.co.uk, and I'd love to, I'm on LinkedIn. Anybody feel free to get in touch.
Brilliant. Thank you, Catherine. Catch you very
All
soon.
right.
Bye for now.
Okay.
All right. See ya.